Hey guys, to prove I'm not going to waste your time, this document is just a simple Google document. It's going to be linked in the description. No opt in required. That means it's not gated. You don't need an email or nothing. And the reason I'm making this is I talked to somebody and I realized something like this might be valuable for y'all. And so it's just a marketing guide. But the whole point of this is to kind of walk you through some of the important decisions you need to make, and then we kind of dive into the different strategies and data providers and stuff like that. And so this is not complete at all. It's just, if you don't know, it's to kind of help you to see what I'm talking about sometimes, because some of these get pretty complex. And so we'll just kind of run through this real quick. Just know I'm not an attorney. I'm not a professional of any kind. I added a disclaimer here. And just know that some of these marketing tactics and strategies are going to be illegal. And just to show you real quick, I have brought those down here. So email marketing to consumers that haven't opted in for such a thing, you can't do that. It's the CAN Spam Act. SMS marketing is considered to be, illegal according to the TCPA, and direct mail voice drops, again, TCPA. I'm not an attorney. Talk to an attorney about this stuff, but I wanted to give you these topics so that way you would know what to ask an attorney about, basically. And I already know everyone's go-to thing about the do not call list when it comes to the cold calling type of marketing strategy. Everyone argues they're not selling anything. They're trying to buy something, and they're saying that the laws don't apply to them. I don't claim that. I'm simply telling you that's what people think. Whether they're right or wrong, I can't say. But now you have the stuff to go and see for yourself, or to go and do your own research. Okay. The most important decisions that you need to make starting off is, are you going to do inbound marketing or outbound marketing? So do you want the prospects to call you, or do you want to have to call them? That's kind of the way to look at it. And there's tons of different strategies. All of these are going to be a mix of inbound and outbound. But that's the first question I want you to ask yourself. And the outbound marketing is the marketing so that it's easy to understand how it is emotionally is. This is the marketing where people absolutely hate your guts. This is the one that can get you sued. This is the one that can bring you regulatory action. So this is going to be like voicemail drops, text messaging, cold calling, anything to where you send something out to the masses is going to be like this. Virtually every business that you can think of, for the most part, they put up a sign, someone sees the sign, and then they buy from them. So that means this is going to be inbound marketing, and this is the marketing to where you don't get hate. So I'm not saying you should do one or the other. I'm just telling you how you may feel emotionally once you start doing outbound marketing. This is where you will literally create arguments in households. Okay. One of the people that I talk with, he actually sends out tens of thousands of pieces of mail. And he was talking to the people, and they would just be irate when they would call him on the phone. And he was like, why on earth are these people getting so mad? So there was times where he would start talking to them, and what would happen was it would start arguments in the household. So like, for instance, the wife is home, she gets a letter to buy a property, and let's say it has a price already listed on it. And let's say it's $100,000 property, but it's worth 150 or 200,000. Well, the wife, as soon as the husband gets off work and comes home, she starts in on him about this stuff. And then they start arguing. And then the husband is super irate, and then he calls into your business just to basically cuss you out. So I'm not saying you shouldn't outbound. I do outbound marketing. So it's just that, like, you should think through that process and decide who you are as a person and then what you want your business to be. But pretty much everybody is outbound marketing, just so you know. Okay. The next decision is on market or off market. So on market is just listed on the MLS. So there's going to be a real estate involved where you're going to have to pay commissions. And then there's going to be the off market, which there's no real estate agent. The people might not even have been considering selling, but you happen to reach out to them, talk to them, and then find out they would like to sell their property. Now, once you've made those couple of decisions there, the marketing budget is, to me, it's like the most important thing. So you can have so many different kinds of business models that there could literally be hundreds of business models. And so I do get questions sometimes of like, you know, why do I not do this? Why do I not do that? Well, it's because of how many different business models there are. There's a ton of these strategies, like most of them I have never done. And it's just because like I like direct mail and I don't need to do a lot of these other strategies just simply because my asset type works really great with direct mail. So you got to pick your marketing asset. You know, it's like picking what kind of marketing do I want to do? Do I want on market, off marketing? What kind of budget do I have to work with? And the budget is determined by your asset type. So are you going after a single family home? Are you going after land, an apartment complex, a duplex, mobile homes? I mean, literally, if you can think it up, it exists as an asset type to where people are making money doing wholesaling or flipping these properties. So you got to think through that. And so if you're doing, you know, marketing to try to get an RV park or, I don't know, like a commercial building or something else, I mean, you could rack up tens of thousands of dollars in marketing spend, whether that's direct mail or something to where you're spending money on labor as a form of marketing, like cold calling. Yes, you have to buy a list. Yes, you do have to skip trace it to get the phone numbers. But I'm just saying there is a huge labor component to that type of marketing. And it goes the same with, you know, if you hire people to go out and be boots on the ground, or if you're hiring real estate agents, then that's just part of your marketing cost is the commissions and things like that. So think through what kind of asset you have. Think through the business model that you want to have. So if you're trying to wholesale, that's a drastically different business than if you're going to do the fix and flip yourself. Some people can spend, you know, quite a bit of money because they're going to flip it themselves, and some people have really unique business models to where they're going to flip this thing, but they're only looking for houses to where they can add a bathroom or add a bedroom to it. In California, because real estate is so expensive, a huge thing that they have to do is value creation, and that's because they can't get the properties at a cheap enough, you know, buy price to make a good spread. So they will literally say, you know, can I change the floor plan and somehow add a bedroom in order to create the value for the deal so they can make enough profit. So that's why I didn't even bother putting the asset types, because there's so many. And then there are so many variations of each asset type. Like let's use land, for instance. There can be a tiny house lot. There can be steel house lots that are, you know, larger, let's say a half acre all the way up to 5 acres. And then there are going to be properties that are like 5 acres to in the thousands of acres. And each one of those can be a different exit strategy as well. Plus, there's different assets. So are you buying timber property that can be logged? Are you buying mountainous? Are you buying hunting land? Are you buying farmland? You know, it really just never ends. And it's the same with houses. And if you don't know about all of these different variations of the assets, it's just because you haven't dove deep enough into the topic. And that will come the more you learn. And who knows, you might even start out in a certain asset class and then realize, okay, I do like single family houses. However, I like going after these types of sellers in these types of situations. And that's what you find your little niche in. You may like to just go after landlords or tired landlords and then buy multiple houses at a time instead of going and buying one deal at a time. Who knows? Totally up to you. Each one is going to have its own little problems, challenges, what have you. They're all going to have, depending on where you're doing this, there are going to be tons of different competition levels in all of these different cities and stuff. So that's why I don't teach this. And it is because there could literally turn into being hundreds of different decisions in order for you to land on your ideal business model that fits your personality. So, and yes, I have heard of people getting deals. One of the craziest that I've ever heard of in my life was somebody bought property data and they literally got a piece of land for, I think, something like $30,000, and they sold it for 60,000, and they did it with 65 letters. Okay, it's just crazy stuff like that I've heard of happening. So let's say that your letters are like, I don't know, $1 a piece. So I mean, think about it, $65. We're paying, because we send bulk rate, we're paying like 60 cents. So for me, I mean, that might be 40 something dollars in direct mail cost. So just treat that like it's a fluke. You won the lottery, and you're not ever going to be able to build a process around a method that might bring you in $100. There are other methods that I've seen. One of the biggest reasons for there being so many, basically like real estate gurus, uh, it's because they want to build a following and then have their students bring them deals. So I'm doing real estate. I don't even like try to have my channel or anything that I do have people bring me deals. I basically am just helping guys, scale their business. And even that's kind of a misnomer. I'm helping guys prepare to scale their business, because scaling does take time and it takes money. The vast majority of people doing real estate aren't in a position to scale because they don't have systems and processes. But anyways, I'm just kind of letting you know that the people that are on social media, and even the people that speak and they create real estate meetup groups in person, like every major metro city, they're all going to have these local real estate meetups. And I know one of the guys who, he's a guru and he goes and speaks on stages in a couple different states. He does speak nationally as well. He creates these meetups just so that way private lenders will be in that room. So now he's got the private money, and then students of his will bring him deals. And so he has an incredibly low cost in advertising in a roundabout way to get the money and the deals in the same room. But it took a tremendous amount of time, and it's something that he's been working at for years to do this. So somebody, you might talk to somebody like that and they're like, well, yeah, my marketing cost is almost nothing. But if you look at his time commitment to having to go and do these meetups, it is absolutely tremendous. And then to deal with all the moving pieces of that, and then he has to travel. So there's so many different ways to do this, but just know, if someone has a super low cost per deal and marketing cost, I would dig into like how that is. What are they doing? Because you might find out, well, I don't actually want to create a YouTube channel. I don't want to go speak on stages. And so then well, that's not going to work for me. But now you know why his marketing cost is so low. I would say with houses, I've heard a ton of people that spend $2,000 to $10,000 to get one house deal, and just know that is not California. If you're talking about East Coast, West Coast, and talking about what it would cost to get a deal there, it is going to be drastically different than your more rural areas or just lower cost per house. Like Alabama and Oklahoma, Missouri, these other states are going to be so much cheaper to get a deal because the deals are smaller, way less value. They could be a third, a fourth, a fifth of what you would be on either one of the coasts. So just keep that in mind. Okay, marketing strategies. Cold calling is legal. Just remember to scrub against the DNC, which is the Do Not Call Registry. Again, I don't like talking about this stuff because I'm not an attorney. I'm literally just trying to help a beginner know what to ask their own real estate attorney, their own miscellaneous attorneys about. And there are also attorneys you can go and learn from on YouTube. There's certain topics that are, very small that I need to learn about. I just go to YouTube and listen to attorneys there. And then you can choose who to hire. Okay. So there's all these different kinds of marketing strategies. I'm not going to go into each one of them. And I don't claim that you should do all of them or the majority of them, because some of these are going to cost so much money. I talked to someone here a while back. They were doing TV advertising, and I think that he only made $55,000 on $20,000 worth of TV ads, something, in those lines. And so just know, and that was over the course of like 3 months. So just know that some of these are going to have a much lower ROI than others. And some of them, can literally lose you money. So just keep stuff like that in mind. Billboards is going to be something super expensive. Now, because you have this document, I just want to kind of teach you how to think about some of these things instead of me going through it because you've got the document yourself. Okay, just as an example, this is just questions you might have if you're doing yard signs and bandit signs. So, what color should the sign be? What color should the font be? What size should the sign be? What thickness should it be? Should it be double-sided? What size or style of stand should I buy? What font to use? What should the copy say? How many words are too many? Is it legal in my area? How many should I put out? What should the sign offer to people? And believe me when I say this is not all of the questions. This is just the ones that I could ramble off in my own head thinking through of each step, which is a decision when doing a yard sign or a bandit sign. And there are tons of laws. So the reason that people are not putting their business names on these bandit signs is because what's called code enforcement in cities and also HOAs, they fine people for putting these signs up. I mean, now I don't know that an HOA is going to fine a person that doesn't live in the HOA, but they pass it along to code enforcement. And so a lot of these people that do these bandit signs is that they might get a phone call out of the blue, and it's like they're just asking them what company they are and stuff like that. And it's so that they can issue them a fine for doing it because they're basically littering and it's against code. And a lot of cities are doing this. Now, the only reason I'm showing you this one is because a novice would probably just see a sign that says "We buy houses," and they would think that's the easiest thing in the world. There's nothing for me to have to think about. However, that's only because you drove past it, you saw it, and you didn't actually think through the steps required. And so the average person would probably not think that there's this many questions they would have about doing a yard sign. If they sat down at a computer to start doing it, they would then realize, wow, this is a tremendous amount of questions I have. Okay, now all of that to say this. Direct mail and cold calling and also social media marketing like Facebook ads and Google ads is also complicated. And Google ads is another one of those that has a very high cost per lead and a high cost per deal. It is not uncommon at all that I've heard of people spending over $10,000 in Google pay-per-click to get one deal. And it is not even that big of an ROI. Some of these people are operating at a 2 to 3 ROI. That means you spend $10,000 in Google pay-per-click, and that deal might only bring you back $20,000. So just know those are the kinds of people you're competing against. Okay, now back to the point I'm making. So all of these questions for this. Now, when you start talking about these other methods here, you could have well over 100 questions. I would not be shocked at all if you could create 200 really good questions to do a direct mail campaign. Because again, to a novice, they're like, hang on, you're saying I could have 100 or more questions to just send someone one piece of mail in order to create the letter and then answer all the questions to do that. And I would say you could easily exceed 100 questions. And so with direct mail, a huge amount of it that is problematic for a beginner is what should the letter say? And that means that when you look at the letters that's on a direct mail piece, that's called copywriting. That's the copy that's on the letter. And that is something that can differentiate you from, your competition and stuff like that. But just know you could easily exceed 100 questions. And so just on the envelope alone, should I put any words on the outside? What should the return address say? Should the envelope be double windowed or just like a standard envelope? Should it have a live stamp on it or should it be bulk rate pre-sort? Okay, what color should the envelope be? What thickness should the envelope be? Okay, what dimension should the envelope be? Okay, we haven't even started talking about the actual letter and then like all of the lists and the other processes to get to that. So it can get incredibly complicated very quickly. And that is why, like me personally, I hired maybe 7 people plus other people to do general business to learn from. And that's because no one really has the answer to all of these things in enough depth to make you very successful per se in doing a thing. So, like for instance, if you send out direct mail, okay, it is a very high cost to do so. I'm spending about 60 cents per letter. Okay, so that includes the letter, the printing, the stuffing the letter into the envelope. That includes the bulk rate postage. So they just like print it on there. There's no stamp, and it looks like junk mail. I mean, keep in mind if you buy a forever stamp, I think a forever stamp right now is about 74 cents. So keep in mind, I'm sending mine with everything combined for about 60 cents, somewhere in there. Now, just think through all of these decisions. And then the biggest problems you have is if there's one or two things or three things that you didn't know about making the direct mail campaign successful with the list, the way that you're scrubbing data, and like the data information itself, the quality of the data, all these things can make your direct mail literally not work at all. I have heard of, I mean, even one of the guys that is very large in the space that I'm in. I mean, he has acknowledged he has sent well over 50,000 pieces of mail and gotten not one deal in 50,000 letters. I mean, even I've sent tens of thousands of pieces before and not gotten a deal in a state before because of competition levels and things like that. These sellers are getting multiple text, multiple ringless voicemails, multiple calls, and pieces of mail per week in a saturated market. And some of the saturated markets are going to be like, the ones that would be common sense: Florida, California, Texas, New York, any of those kinds of states where there's a huge population and lots of large cities with a lot of money in each city. Okay, so just be thinking through that. I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from anything. I just want y'all to think about that because when I was first learning, there was a situation with the direct mail and our ROI was way lower than it needed to be. It should have been way more. And turns out, in order for us to have overcome that, is what we ended up doing was scrubbing out all of the data of people that weren't likely to sell to us. And believe me when I say that what I'm doing is more complicated than what y'all are doing. So my letters actually have me put an offer amount in the letter. Now, for when it comes to houses and stuff, typically everyone is just saying, hey, call us for a cash offer on your property. For us, we go a step further on the data analysis and we send out offers on our mail pieces. So that means they open it up and it's offering them a set cash amount for their property. And so I have a data analytics process to where we have a data analyst, data manager go through with a junior data analyst, and then they can actually figure out what we should be offering for these properties, which is incredibly common in what I'm doing. But if there's one thing that you mess up in the data analyst job position, then that can throw off your mail and cause huge problems. So just know that if you hear me talking and I'm talking about how complex something is, you may not be doing anything remotely close to what I'm doing. So don't get hung up on that. Okay, so just understand how complex some of these things can get. These are different types of marketing lists. The only thing I think is important to touch on here is going to be these are some of the most marketed to lists in the US, because what happens is there are 50 YouTube real estate gurus talking about these lists. And a lot of these software companies are also saying, they're advertising on the front end, get this list. And so what's happening is everyone is getting those lists. So those prospects are getting so many touch points, calls, text, and direct mail per week that it's kind of shocking. I've talked to people who are receiving 5 to 10 letters per week offering to buy their property. Now, think about it. It's like credit cards. They send you a piece of mail every week or every 2 weeks or every month. I mean, the credit card companies are mailing more offers than any other industry that I can think of other than maybe like a loan service or something. So just keep in mind, if you choose some of these lists, they are the most mailed to lists that are in existence. So just be cautious. You may realize, well, I'm more interested in just marketing to people with this asset type instead of what the owner or situation is classified as. Okay. And you may layer list incredibly heavily. So you may go back and say, I only want to mail to people who's owned this property for at least 10 years. And then if it's a tired landlord, you may go, they have to own at least 2 properties or more. And, I don't know. You just keep layering the list to where they have to meet this very minute criteria. And if they meet them all, then I want to market to just those people. And because it increases the likelihood that they might sell to me. So you can get creative on that. Just so you know, I'm not affiliated. Like I don't have any affiliate links whatsoever to anything. So I didn't even include their website here, but y'all can go and find these. This is just the ones that I can think of off the top of my head. PropWire is free. If you're wondering how they're free, I'm sure that they're selling you the phone numbers and stuff like that on the back end. So it's basically like, hey, you can have this property data and then maybe you can buy the phone number from us so we make our money. So if you're cold calling, you're going to have to skip trace. I did not bother putting the skip tracing companies, and that is because I don't even want to deal with that on if you if you buy data from a bad skip tracing data provider, your marketing will not work because the phone numbers will not be current and up to date. So I've seen these people selling, skip tracing for like a nickel, and I would definitely question like, how good is that data? Because that is so cheap. The best data for skip tracing comes from, I can't remember if it's DLO or TLO, but it has to do with, it's the data that comes from the credit card companies. And that is going to be some of the best data that you can get because it's very current. Those phone numbers will work a lot of the time. So you can go down the rabbit hole of figuring out, all of these different skip tracing companies because I don't want to recommend them or speak for them or anything. Even though I'm not recommending them or anything, I'm just saying they exist and you can kind of see the differences between each one when you look them up on your own. For my opinion, Data Tree is on the higher cost. I can't even remember what they cost now, but they're over a nickel each, all the way down to PropWire being free. And then PropStream and some of these other ones are probably between like 1 to 2 cents, something like that, if you're just dying to know before you look them up. Okay, other ways of getting deals that aren't necessarily you spending money on the front end. So I kind of thought up some networking types of situations and people that you could contact. One of the little sleeper ways that I don't hear a ton of people necessarily doing is networking with nursing homes and assisted living, because what happens is they get houses as payment for the healthcare services. And so I do hear people finding great success buying houses from some of these companies. And there are lots of companies that own, a tremendous amount of nursing homes and assisted living. So you could make a couple of connections there and then get multiple deals per year from these types of referrals here. Because it's like they just want the money. They don't actually want the house. They just want it in order to pay for the nurses and all of the expenses for the nursing home. So, okay, on to the next. Referrals are right here. 2 creative ways that I've heard of people making money, and the list of how you can make money doing this is almost endless. Bird dogging is where you hire people to find you deals, but keep in mind, it's illegal in a lot of places if the person does not have a real estate agent license. So check with your attorney on wherever you are, wherever you're doing this. Another creative way is you could potentially team up with wholesalers on deals that they don't know how to handle. So I actually know of a guy I've talked to in person, and he literally gets quite a few deals per year from people that don't know how to handle problems with properties. So here's a for instance. If you don't know how to handle probate, because probate can get incredibly complicated. Let's say, for instance, you have a property that has 45, 50, or 60 heirs on it. This guy specializes in finding all of those heirs, buying out some of their ownership, and then he forces the sale. And, you know, that's like a huge strategy that people do. So just know that he has and if you're wondering like, well, what does that look like on the back end? It's pretty complex. He has a team of virtual assistants and he works with attorneys. And those virtual assistants have to go and research the family trees, find out all of the people involved, and then they've got to actually go and get all of their data so that they can send them direct mail, cold call them, and stuff like that in order to get a hold of them to tell them, hey, I don't know if you know this or not, but this person passed away. You were given some ownership of this property, and then he will buy them out. So obviously for a small amount of money. That can be a huge like money making strategy, but just keep in mind it is very complex for a beginner. I would in no way recommend it if you have never done any of it, because it is very creative ways of making a deal and it is very costly. And just so you know, as far as the time frames, some of the properties he has done has taken literally 2 to 3 years to close from the time he found one person who was interested in selling it and found out about the situation around it. So that's why I don't recommend it for a beginner. A beginner would starve to death long before some of these deals could even be closed. Okay, some tips here. I may end up going back and re-adding that, but not really a whole lot I want to cover here. One of the cool things I thought that I'd bring up is heir finding services. If you do real estate for very long, you're going to realize your number one problem is the people that want to sell to you aren't the legal owner, or it would require probate in order for them to sell it to you. So I just wanted to go ahead and kind of let you know that this is a thing that exists. And then I don't really want to talk about this much. This is just the different forms of illegal marketing. And yes, there are ways to send email legally. However, people have to opt in to do it and things like that. So a company, if you sign up for an email list, then yes, they can send it to you. But if you're just like sending emails out to people, you can get fined. So they can either draw up a lawsuit and then sue you. So it's like one person that you emailed is suing you, and or it could be a regulatory body finding out about you, even though that likelihood is low, it could still happen. So, and the more you send, the more likely you are to get hit by some lawsuit. I was in a mastermind, and one of them was going through a lawsuit for $17,000 because they were texting people. And you can't text someone if you don't have written consent, like written permission. So they have to like check a box, on a landing page or something and consent to receiving text messages. Otherwise, it's illegal. And of course, it's not like you've ever talked to them, so you're not going to be able to get that. So just know I've personally heard of this. There's also a video on YouTube to where someone was talking about getting a lawsuit from a person because they were texting them, and or I can't remember, they might have even been cold calling and the person was on the do not call list. And there is a guru, just so you know, out there selling courses and education on teaching you how to sue cold callers, so spammers. And it's basically, they just teach you how to get the company name out of them and stuff like that. So that way you can draw up a lawsuit and then send to them. So just know there's people laying in the grass, essentially, waiting to get these calls, because they even go out to phone services and buy up lots of phone numbers. And this is becoming like a side hustle or a small business for some of these people after they went through that education. They buy a whole lot of phone numbers, wait, and then they register them all on the do not call list, wait for people to cold call them, and then get out the company name so that they can look them up and then go and like issue them lawsuits for every phone call or text or whatever. So that's just something to look up with an attorney, and there are a couple videos on YouTube about that. So I hope this really helps y'all. Link to this is in the description. No opt-in necessary. If y'all have any other things that y'all would like me to talk about, just drop me a comment sometime.